wind drifts gently through narrow London lanes, rattling iron gates and carrying with it the faintest sound of song. It begins as a whisper, soft voices in the distance, unaccompanied, almost hesitant. Then, as the singers draw near, the melody grows clearer, brighter, until it reaches the light spilling from a doorway. The tune is familiar, yet ancient. God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. The voices tremble slightly in the cold, but there is warmth in their harmony. A passerby stops, listens, smiles. Inside, a curtain is drawn aside, and a woman places a candle on the sill, letting its glow meet the singer's shadows. Thus, the carol returned to Christmas. By the time Queen Victoria took the throne, the English carol was almost a relic of the past. In the early 19th century, caroling had fallen from fashion, considered rustic, even improper. The Puritans had long discouraged such singing, associating it with drunken revels and pagan customs. Many old carols survived only in rural villages, passed from mouth to mouth, sung quietly at firesides or in barns, but something began to change around mid-century. A yearning for tradition stirred in the Victorian soul, a desire to rediscover the old and make it new again. It was the same impulse that brought back medieval architecture, folklore, and ancient Christmas customs. The Victorians, standing on the edge of modernity, looked backward for meaning. And from that yearning rose a sound, gentle, human, communal. The revival began in small ways. In 1833, a young lawyer and antiquarian named William Sandys published a collection titled Christmas Carols, Ancient and Modern. He had traveled through rural England, recording songs from the mouths of villagers and church choirs. Many of these tunes had never been written down before. Within his pages appeared titles that would become immortal. The first novel, God Rest Ye Merry, Gentlemen, I Saw Three Ships, and Hark! The herald angels sing. At first, Sandys' collection was of interest only to scholars and musicians. But soon, church choirs began to reintroduce the melodies into Christmas services, and families began to sing them at home. By the 1840s, carols were once again part of public life. Street singers, once dismissed as beggars, became welcome guests at the door. People dropped coins into their baskets, not out of pity, but appreciation. The carolers' breath rose in clouds of white, their lanterns swinging gently in the dark. In towns and villages, choirs organized formal carol evenings. Parish churches were lit with dozens of candles. Pews filled with neighbors wrapped in scarves and shawls, the organist would strike the first note. And soon the building swelled with sound, old melodies reborn in the echoing stone. To the Victorians, music was more than entertainment. It was a way to feel connected, to time, to faith, to each other. And Christmas carols, with their simplicity and warmth, were perfectly suited to the domestic, sentimental age. They were songs of comfort, of community, of light shining in darkness. Imagine a modest parlor on Christmas Eve in 1862. The fire crackles, casting golden reflections on the glass ornaments of a small fir tree. A mother sits at the piano, her fingers moving slowly over worn ivory keys. Beside her, a boy of 10 holds a hymn book, his voice clear and careful as he sings. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. The song, recently translated from German, had arrived in England only a few years earlier. It spread quickly through households and churches, beloved for its gentle melody and message of peace. The mother smiles as her son's voice grows stronger, and soon the rest of the family joins in. Outside, the street is silent, save for the occasional clip of hooves or a dog's bark. But within that small house, there is harmony. a stillness filled with sound. Music, more than any sermon or story, carried the essence of Victorian Christmas. It bridged class and distance, language and faith. Carols were sung in city chapels and country lanes, in orphanages and royal halls alike. Queen Victoria herself was fond of them. In the royal household, Prince Albert often led the children in song on Christmas Eve. Their favorite was "O Come, All Ye Faithful," a carol of triumph and devotion. The royal enthusiasm soon filtered through society. Choirs across Britain adopted the same pieces, until it seemed that every street and chapel rang with shared melody. There was also the influence of another innovation: the printed music book. For the first time, families could purchase small, affordable hymn collections. To keep at home, publishers released illustrated songbooks filled with carols, both sacred and secular. The act of gathering around the piano became an emblem of Victorian family life, an image so iconic that artists like George Hilliard Swinstead and Charles Green painted it again and again. A mother at the keys, children in nightclothes, a father turning the pages by candlelight. The piano itself became a centerpiece of the home, as essential to middle-class respectability as the tea set or the mantel clock. Music was civilization made audible. And during Christmas, it was love made sound. In some places, the revival took on grander proportions. In 1878, the first formal 9 lessons and carols service was held in Truro Cathedral, Cornwall, an evening that would later inspire the famous annual tradition at King's College, Cambridge. The format was simple yet profound. Readings from Scripture intertwined with carols old and new, sung by choir and congregation alike. The service moved people deeply, blending the solemnity of worship with the intimacy of song. It became, in many ways, the musical soul of the Victorian Christmas, a blend of devotion, nostalgia, and beauty. Even outside the church, carols found a place in everyday life. On Christmas Eve, small groups of singers would go from door to door through fog and snow, carrying lanterns and song sheets. Sometimes they sang for charity, sometimes for the simple joy of it. Theirs was not a performance, but a gift, one offered freely, expecting nothing more than a smile or a warm drink. It was common for families to step out to listen, their breath rising in the frosty air as the music wrapped the street in quiet magic. When the song ended, a few coins were placed in the singers' hats, a nod, a blessing, and they moved on to the next house. In those moments, the city seemed gentler, smaller, transformed by the fragile grace of human voice. The Victorians also delighted in the new secular songs that began to appear near the end of the century. Composers like Arthur Sullivan, of Gilbert and Sullivan fame, wrote festive melodies for parlors and theaters, sheet music of the Boar's Head Carol, Good King Wenceslas, and Deck the Hall sold by the thousands. Songs that once belonged to the village green now entered the drawing room. In this way, Christmas music became a shared language between all classes, a sound that united factory workers and aristocrats, Londoners and villagers, believers and those who simply cherished the warmth of the season. And so, as Christmas night settled over the cities and countryside of Victorian England, there was always singing somewhere. In a great cathedral, voices rose like incense beneath the vaulted roof. In a small cottage, a mother hummed softly as she tucked her children into bed. In the streets, groups of carolers disappeared into the snow, their lanterns swaying like stars. Even the lonely, the widow by the window, the sailor far from home, could hum a tune and feel for a moment less alone. Music gave shape to emotion when words were not enough. When we think of Victorian Christmas now, we often imagine its sights: the tree, the feast, the glowing hearth, but just as vivid were its sounds, the tolling of bells, the creak of snow underfoot, and above all, the voices that rose to greet the long winter night with hope. The Victorians had turned Christmas into a symphony of kindness. Every note, every verse, every echo of harmony was a reminder that light and warmth can be born from even the coldest of seasons. And if you listen closely, even now, through the noise of the modern world, you might still hear it. The ghost of a carol drifting through the frost, faint but clear. A sound older than memory, yet forever new. A gift from those candlelit nights of the 19th century, still carried in our own quiet December evenings, curl up under the covers. Let the candlelight glow softly in your imagination, and join me on a peaceful stroll through the musical heart of Victorian Christmas. If you like this story for the night, please like, subscribe, and share another era you would like to visit. God rest ye merry, gentlemen. Let nothing you dismay.